more specifically. On our Friday teacher talk, it is not just me. We have a few teachers here as well. But before I ask you guys to introduce yourselves, I want to introduce Matt as well. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Kelsey. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to answering some questions that are coming in from Facebook.
That's right. So Matt is our director and producer, and he also is monitoring our live Facebook feed. So if you have any comments or questions for me or any of the teachers who have joined us here today, or you want to just say like, amen, sister, like me too, I feel that, whatever it is, you can comment live on Facebook, and Matt will take those things and he'll let us know about them. Thanks, Matt. All right, so I'd love for our other teachers who are with us today to introduce themselves. We're going to cancel my spotlight, and I'd love if you want to introduce yourself, you can wave your hand in front of the camera, raise your hand like we've been doing, and you can say your name, and if you want to say what you teach, we'd love to hear that, and then also your favorite robot in popular culture. So do you want to go first, Tracy? We'll unmute you. There you go. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Tracy. I teach at a school in Northbrook, Illinois. I work with students who all have special needs, and I teach K-12 for the STEAM classes there. My favorite robot is Data from Star Trek.
Nice.
Gotta love him.
And I'm so glad you're with us today, Tracy, too, because just as we were kind of talking a little bit before we started, one of the things that you want to cover today, which I'd love to kind of pick all of our brains about, is teaching robotics and coding, focusing on students with special needs. So what are our best practices in doing that? And I will absolutely not claim to have all of the answers by any means with that. And maybe we can all kind of brainstorm together about that a little bit. So who else would like to introduce themselves? Thanks, Tracy. Let's go to Dagny, and then we'll go to Frank. Hey, Dagny, we'll unmute you. Actually, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Dagny, and I actually just graduated. Well, I'll graduate next Saturday from Iowa State, but I do a lot of after-school programming with K-12 robotics programs. And I think my favorite robot from pop culture is Eva from WALL-E.
Good call, good call. What do you like about Eva?
I just like that she's super helpful and just, yeah.
Nice. That you weren't expecting a follow-up question, but there it was. How about you, Frank? Would you like to introduce yourself? I'd love to get to know you.
I'm actually a software engineer by trade, but live in an impoverished neighborhood, and we bought a house and changed it into a makerspace for kids.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
So we're always exploring different things that we teach them.
Okay. Do you have a favorite robot from pop culture?
I think WALL-E's pretty cool.
WALL-E's pretty cute.
Yeah.
Did you see this week we made this little bot character, and one of our teachers who's been coming back over and over, Sam Yancey, he made a WALL-E version of this robot. Did you see that?
No, I did not see that. I'll have to check that out.
Well, you'll have to check that out on Twitter if you look for Sam Yancey. He's got it's the funniest thing. Maybe Matt can actually pull it up off to the side here, and we can take a look at that later.
Sure.
Anyone else want to introduce themselves? How about you, Sarah?
My name is Sarah. I teach Innovation Lab to 5th and 6th graders, and Hummingbird robots are my favorite tool to teach with. I always want to learn more because the students teach me things every year that I didn't know. And I actually fall in love with their robots. I don't know that I love WALL-E, but I actually, one of the robots they made last year was a giraffe that when you got close to it would offer to give you a hug. So I don't know if I could pick anything except my students' robots. So
that's a really lovely answer of just like anything my students make brings me such joy.
Does.
So
it does, yeah.
I bet you're missing them a lot right now.
A lot, yeah.
I think
And
we
I
all
love
are.
the idea of a robot that hugs.
Yeah.
Like its output is a hug.
It is.
We'll have to make you some arms so that you can also hug Matt. Would anybody else like to introduce themselves? Yeah, Heather. There you go.
Yeah, I'm good. Okay, my name is Heather Klima. I'm a TK5 EdTech teacher on special assignment and Maker Studio teacher at a small public school in Palo Alto. And I've attended a couple of your sessions. My daughter's joined one, and we made the little bot.
I saw that on Twitter too. I love the mouth. The mouth just makes me laugh. And the little name tag and the eyes. So funny.
A lot of fun. She loved it. And then I totally forgot about the session yesterday with the muscles and bones, but one of my students at my school, Layla, was able to join. She's actually a little first grader, so it's really great to see her on.
She was great. Her little sister, I think, made an appearance too in the thing, and she was an awesome little maker. I'm so glad she was there.
Yeah, no, I love your sessions so much. I'm gonna attend more. My favorite robot, Iron Giant. Does that count?
Yeah, big robot, big giant robot.
Big robot.
Yeah, not little robot. That's great. And actually, Matt pulled up Wally, so I'm gonna go over to. Do you want to switch it back there? So this is the Wally that Sam Yancey made. It combines a hummingbird to control the arms and I think the head, and then it's got another robot down below that's controlling the wheels. So just wanna uplift +1 for Sam Yancey because he is awesome, and it was great to see what he turned his little bot design into. So anybody else want to introduce themselves? Jen, would you like to? No pressure to.
Hi, yes. My name is Jen, and I am a first-year teacher trying to learn as much as I can while I am quarantined and doing distance learning. So anything you talk about here is probably the first time I am familiar with it, but I do want to add, I have some students who are just incredible with technology, and while maybe writing and I'm in lower elementary, so while some other tasks might be difficult or challenging, if I can integrate more technology in the classroom, I think that'll create more buy-in and authentic learning. So for the other subjects. So that's what I'm going for.
Do you have a favorite robot in pop culture, Jen?
Anything from Star Wars?
Yeah. They do such a good job like making you care deeply about those little robots, don't they? R2-D2 and BB-8 and all the folks. All right, cool. Well, it's really great to meet all of you guys. I'm super glad you're here, and really glad to have you guys on board for our session today. Actually, Matt, did we have a comment come in from Facebook?
Yeah, it looks like there are a few comments coming in from Facebook right now.
What's that?
Doreen's favorite robot is number 5 from Short Circuit.
Okay,
and,
yeah.
Eileen, our friend Eileen Malik's, her favorite robot is the Microbe Obliterator, the Grumpy Wally cleaning robot.
Oh, there we go. Grumpy Wally. Some of us like Happy Wally. Eileen. No. Grumpy Wally. Well, thank you guys for chiming in on Facebook. Just to prove it's really happening. That's great. Well, so to kind of kick us off here today, I wanted to kind of cover a couple of the projects that we did this week. So we did 2 projects, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday, and I'd love for you guys' help. I'll kind of talk a little bit about the project and what we did, give you guys who are here live on Zoom, if you want a chance to control it remotely, we're going to give you a chance to control this little bot here and kind of program it a little bit and see what you can do to it. We're going to do that. And what I really want to do, because the focus is teacher talks, is think about not just how to make it, not just how to code it, but how could you teach it? So what class could this be in? How could you alter this project to fit your needs as a teacher, you specifically, or another teacher that you have in mind of like, oh, this could be great for my second grade code teacher. She could really benefit from something like this. So whether it's Littlebot, the ARM project, or we're going to do a preview of the projects we're going to do next week as well. So just as a quick preview, I'll kind of start in with our Littlebot here. So the Littlebot, I think, is a really fun project, and I'll cut to a little close-up we have of it over here. Oh,
let me fix that.
Matt can fix that for us.
One moment.
Yep. So the Littlebot is a project that it's pretty exciting because it's really easy to make. It's really easy to code, and we have a tutorial that supports it as well. Actually, here we go. Littlebot, there he is. Hey, Littlebot. So our Littlebot character there, he there we go. He's really just 2 motors. So if I'll go to this top-down shot here so you can kind of see how he's made a little bit better. I shouldn't say he. I haven't asked the robot's gender. It, and see how it is made. It's really two motors. One is glued to the other one here. And so what we did this week is we made both the robotic version, so I'll put him right here, he'll be my sidekick, and we made a non-robotic version as well for those folks who didn't have a hummingbird at home but wanted to make something really satisfying. So by just using a toilet paper tube, a pencil, and a couple of boxes, we made a robot that could also look side to side and look up and down, like so. There we go. We can get these two side by side. We'll go like so. So we can do a little a choreographed dance. We'll look up and down, like so. We'll look side to side, like so. There we go. So they have some of the same capabilities, although this one has a separate capability that you don't have, which is that since it's got this long neck, it can also go up and down. It's got a Z-axis here. So this was just a super easy project to make. And if you want to learn how to make this one or this one, you can tune into our Tuesday webinar. It's on YouTube and it's on Facebook. So if you want to check those out and make right along with us, we did both the non-robotic version and the robotic version in that webinar. And I want to show you where to find the resources on our website so that you can also make a little bot. Here's my mouse. My little bot is stealing my mouse. Okay, so I'm going to go over to the internet really quick. Ooh, here we are. So if I go to birdbraintechnologies.com, there we go. I'll resize my window here so you can actually see the whole thing. There we are. If I go to birdbraintechnologies.com, just kind of the basic site here, I'll X out of that. Although that does take us where we want to go, in a lot of ways, this at-home button is a great place to start if you are trying to think about how to learn from home. But just to kind of take you through our basic portal here, we can, I'll come back to that. I'm just going to go up to the search function and type in little bot. So if you just type in littlebot in our search function, the first thing that comes up is how to build a littlebot. So there is a great video series here which has a bunch of different features. Each of these little videos is really short. So this video is 14 seconds long. This video 3 here is 19 seconds long. They're really quick step-by-step instructions for how to make a littlebot. So you could follow these, do it at your own pace, on your own time. You can pause, rewind. You can read a little bit about it on the side here if you're into that kind of thing. But you can also just follow along with the videos here. But if I go back to the first one, at the bottom of this description, there's also this button that says Build Variations. And so this is Matt the human, Matt the man, talking about how to do different variations on the littlebot as well. So if you're looking for, all right, well I have the tiny motors. I don't have the bigger black motors that come in the premium kit. I have the little blue motors that come in the base kit. What modifications are we going to need? Or all I've got is a macaroni box and a cup. How can I do this? Well, he kind of takes you through some different variations on the littlebot character based on what you might have at home. So you could watch that video. He actually talks with his mouth in it. It's pretty cool. I had him muted, but you get to see his face and his voice at the same time. Very rare. But so that's where you could find how to build your own littlebot. But I'm going to head back to gallery view now and cancel my spotlight, if you can help me out with that.
Sure.
And just ask you guys, when you see a project like this, or perhaps like this, you know, what contexts do you see this being successful in a school or an after-school program with the students you work with or with someone your colleague works with? What are your ideas for putting this project into action? Yeah, what about you, Sarah?
I could see students bringing a character from a novel to life, like turning littlebot into a specific character from a book.
Yeah, could be a great character study. If you're doing like Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird, what does Scout look like? And this is a boxy little character, but you can make the head look like anything. It could be Scout stuck in the ham, you know, whatever it is. You could use this as an inspiration for how to animate the head to move on 2 axes and turn that into a character study for a book. So it could be an English language arts connection. Yeah, what else? Any other ELA connections that you guys can build off of Sarah's idea?
science connection. With science, as a new teacher, I'm learning that with STEAM integration, everything has a form and a function, and why is a bird's beak a certain way? What is the purpose of that? And so I'm just wondering, it seems like so simple when you showed how it moves. And so to build animals and to be able to use that same, like the neck piece and whatever, for other parts of building an animal, basically, to let the students kind of emulate what that animal is needing to do as they use like their beak or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's a really cool idea. I mean, does anybody else have any reactions to that before I kind of make some comment on it? Did you have something, Tracy?
I was gonna say, I think that's a great idea, because then it also gives the kids a place to make their learning sticky and a place to practice it.
I've seen teachers do some really successful animal adaptations units with like the robot petting zoo design, but taking this as like, well, this is something with a head and a neck. Most animals have a head and a neck, so like, and a body, you know. Not all, but most. Tasmanian Devil, the cartoon one, not so much, but the rest of them, they have a head and a neck and a body, right? And so you could turn this into not a humanoid character, but an animal-like character, and then this only uses 2 motors, and the Hummingbird, if I kind of look at what else is available on the Hummingbird itself, I'm going to come back and spotlight my video really quick, so we can see it a little closer up. This is only using 2 motor ports on here. So there's 2 other motors. You could make 2 other things move on your animal or on your character. There are 3 single LED ports. There are 2 tri-LED ports. Those are ways that you can incorporate light and changing colors of light into your animal or your character. There's 3 sensor ports down here, so you could get your animal to respond to its environment. If this was a bird, what kind of sensor would a bird use? And when that sensor was triggered, what would the bird do? You know, something like that. It's even got a buzzer on here, so you could make it make sort of animal noises. Now, you can't do recorded sound with it out of the Hummingbird, although if you're using BirdBlocks and you're doing an iPad, you can record sounds and play it with it. So you could do a really cool like animal adaptations unit with what's the form and the function of your animal. Everything that has a form, there's a reason that it looks like that it works like that. So what's the function of that? That's a really cool lesson tie-in, Jen. That's a great idea. I'm going to go back to gallery view so we can see everybody again. Does anybody else have other ideas? Science, social studies, math, after school, socio-emotional learning, like other tie-ins that you see with a little character like Littlebot? And I want to check in with Facebook too, just to see if there's any questions or comments coming in from Facebook, ideas that people might have for how to incorporate Littlebot into a classroom.
Yeah, we do actually have one idea. This is again from Eileen. Mm-hmm. She says, we do a robotics activity where one child begins the design on paper. Then they have to give their robot to the next person, who has the choice to change that design or do their own thing and delete what the previous person has done. So it's sort of like an animal adaptations activity. I could see that working out really well, actually.
Yeah, it sounds like an exercise in a collaborative process as well, of like, all right, so whatever the design, I think that process that was that Eileen? That was Eileen, yeah. Eileen, that process that Eileen was talking about could be applied to a bunch of different projects of, all right, one person start by designing something, the second person take that design and change or add or delete something and bring this into existence, and then the next person, you know, like we could all be working on 3 different robots, and there could, like, that could kind of travel around, sort of like a stations approach, but a stations approach to collaboration. That is a really cool, just like classroom flow idea that I've never done that before. That sounds really interesting. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it kind of gives multiple groups of students ownership over multiple projects as well. We all created all of these together, rather than our groups is better than your groups. Like, everybody has something great about it, and everybody contributed to all of these too. That's a really cool way to think about collaborating and creating something, Eileen. Thank you for that. Does anybody have any questions about Littlebot or any other ideas that you want to offer about that particularly? Okay. Well, then I'll bring down the other project that we did this week, and we can talk about this one a little bit. Take me just a second. There we go. So this project here, and I'm actually going to set this on a hummingbird because it moves in some three-dimensional ways that are best viewed when it has some room to move. There we go. And can you spotlight me again, Matt?
You bet.
Thank you. Okay, so this project here is, I'm setting this on a Hummingbird Kit. This is a Muscles and Bones project. So this was originally conceived and executed and taught, that's what I should say, taught, by Brett Slezak, who is an awesome educator in the Pittsburgh area, or he was the last time I talked to him. And he was teaching middle schoolers, and I believe this was perhaps in a health class or maybe a biology class, I'm not sure. But he was having his students understand how muscles and bones work together. So with just one, each group, the way that it was taught originally, since we're focusing on teaching, each group got a different joint that they had to bring to life. So this group got the elbow. And in order to make the elbow work, you've got to widen your vision a little bit, because how the elbow works actually has a lot to do with the shoulder, with up here, because that's where those muscles that pull on the lower arm are attached. They're attached up here. So they ended up incorporating both of these. In their design, they had to label all the bones, they had to label the muscles, and then they had to get the muscles to work in pairs, because muscles work in pairs. And so they've got the bicep up here and the tricep back here. And you can see as one muscle pulls taut, the other muscle goes loose, which is how our arm actually works too. So if my bicep is pulling tight up here, my tricep is loosening down here, and vice versa. This one's pulling, right, like that. So this one's pulling, right, this one's pulling now. So it was a way for kids to understand how muscles and bones are put together by doing it, by making it, not by labeling a diagram, right, by actually making a working version of that. So I'd like to kind of, I think we could all think about how this would work in a biology project or something like that. But if we can expand this concept and explode it out a little bit and brainstorm, what other kinds of things do you come to you guys' mind of what kinds of projects could you learn how this thing works by making a working model of it? Yeah, what do you think, Heather?
It's making me think. I took a class with Maker Ed up in Berkeley, California, and we looked at parts and how they work, and it made me think about how maybe before introducing this to students, like you're looking at everyday objects like maybe an egg beater or a wine cork remover, and you're looking at all the pieces and how they work together and how each one is important and how they work together. So kind of exploring that before making it on your own. It's just making me think more about that.
Yeah, there's this show that Matt loves and he introduced me to called The Reassembler. Do you want to tell him what The Reassembler is, Matt?
Sure. How could I possibly be blanking on
the
on
guy's
his
name?
James May.
James May.
Yeah. So if you're humored by James May and his personality, you would love The Reassembler. But basically, what he does is he takes apart common items, radios or lawnmowers, and takes them apart piece by piece and then slowly puts them back together. And I think it's the most satisfying show in the world.
How often does he have pieces left over?
0% of the time.
Really?
He's a pro. Yeah.
Oh. Well, my show, if I were doing that, would be different. I think I would. I don't think I've ever not had pieces left over when making a piece of IKEA furniture. It's probably fine. Everything in my house is very stable. You should come over sometime. But if you're, I think that concept that you're talking about, Heather, of understanding how something works by making it, maybe the first step in that is actually understanding how something works by taking it apart. What opportunities can we give students to take something apart and then to put it back together, perhaps with a different set of materials, right? So maybe there could be like a frog dissection unit where they learn how muscles and bones work, where they take it apart, and then they have to make their own out of craft supplies. So what kinds of supplies can mimic the elasticity of a muscle and the firmness of a muscle, and what kinds of supplies can mimic the rigidity of a bone? So now that you know that the rigidity of a bone is really important and the elasticity of a muscle is really important, you've got to find analogs for that, or find stand-ins for that to make your own version. But I don't know if you guys have ever gotten to teach a lesson where kids got to take things apart before, but there is such joy in destruction.
Yeah. I had students take apart the little wind-up toys to understand how wind-up works. And then they got into the special box where it's, it's all wound up, and and they couldn't put that together, but some of them, didn't take that one piece apart, and they were able to kind of create like Frankenstein type wind-ups, and it was really cool that they got to, see the inside of it.
That's really fun. I've had teachers talk to me about doing a toy take apart. They'll go to like Goodwill and they'll just get some of those old animatronic toys like the glowworm or like the Santa that shakes its butt or whatever, and they'll let the kids kind of rip the fuzzy stuff off and see how the robot part works and take that apart, and then they'll turn that into a hummingbird project in that, okay, this toy doesn't work anymore, but you see how it could, now make your own version of that with a hummingbird, or shove a hummingbird inside and put a motor in there and like fix this toy with a hummingbird, a technology that you do understand, and so they got to kind of like rip apart this old toy and fix it with a hummingbird. I think I've probably talked to 3 or 4 teachers around the country that do that like toy take apart lesson, and they're always like, it's very disturbing during it because they're just like ripping the heads off of Teddy the bear or whatever with such glee, but then they fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Tracy.
It's with my students, it's a really great way for them to start to learn how to use tools too, like little screwdrivers, and how nuts and bolts actually go together, because all of my students have special needs, and some of them really need help with that dexterity, and it's a great place to start. Something that's not gonna be a problem if they break it, and then we can make something else out of it. Love it.
Yeah, and you can kind of learn what the function. I think in some ways it's easier to unscrew something than it is to screw it, because to screw it together you've got to understand this piece and the screw. But to unscrew it, like undoing that, I think the screwdriver is a really good example, because I'm learning how to twist, I'm learning how to apply pressure while twisting. That I feel like is a microcosm of why taking things apart as a way to learn about them is a really good idea, because it's, okay, that's how it's supposed to fit together. Oh, I broke it. Oh, I know how to fix it. But just looking at 3 things next to each other, this piece, and a screw, I might not know how they fit together.
Right. I love that, taking things apart.
Yeah. I think this might be a really good transition, actually, to talk about some of the challenges and the opportunities of teaching robotics and coding to students with special needs. So as a couple examples, I've been talking with a teacher, Sandy Bleeker, if you're watching, Sandy, hi, who works with students who have hearing difficulties and hearing challenges. She works at a school for the deaf. And so she does a lot of coding. She teaches, I think, coding and computer science. Is that right, Matt?
Yes,
I
that's
think so.
one of the things.
That's one of the things she teaches. She's just an all-around wonderful human being. And she's working with students who are deaf, and some of the problems that she encounters that are not unique to that community, but are particular to that community are, sometimes they're a little bit behind in like language acquisition because they haven't heard language spoken, for the first few years of their life if they were born with hearing challenges. And so one of the things that she really likes about our website is that the majority of our tutorials are wordless and soundless. So they're not missing anything. They are meant to just be watched and followed along with, right? But can I ask you about your students, Tracy? What kinds of you said they're students with special needs. What sort of special needs do they have?
It runs the gamut. Most of them have like a reading or a math disability. It's more the specific learning disabilities. But along with that, a lot of fine motor issues. So putting things together, taking things apart. We're also always working with like vocabulary and working memory, so that once they learn the steps to a process, that they'll be able to duplicate it somewhere else with another type of project.
So let me consult the panel here of what kinds of and you know, feel free to lead this portion a little bit, Tracy, but like what kinds of challenges and opportunities, if we just focus on like reading and math difficulties, thinking about any student out there, maybe they're presenting with reading and math difficulties, or maybe they're kind of struggling and we don't know they're struggling yet with reading and math difficulties. What kinds of challenges do you think that there are in teaching robotics and coding to students who are struggling in math and reading? And what kinds of opportunities do you think we have? Do you think that teaching robotics and coding could offer these students? Wherever you guys want to start, what do you think?
I think the challenge begins with being able to read everything. So when you talk about your directions being wordless, that they have a different mode of accessing information to help them be successful. And I think that's the best part about teaching hands-on, is that's something that they get to experience in multiple ways with their hands. They can hear our directions. They can see other kids working on the project and being successful. They can also look over and gather ideas that they hadn't thought of before. So I think that's how they can be successful with the coding and the robotics, along with being able to follow directions and directionality, because, you know, we take it for granted that we know what left and right are. My students have to be shown and taught over and over. So I just like the fact that with coding, it can be very repetitive, especially when you're putting together sequences.
And you can use the same concept, like, you know, what is a sequence or something? You can use the same concept to make so many different projects in Scratch, or to make so many different projects with a Hummingbird, or to make so many different projects with a microbit. That same concept can be applied a bunch of different ways. So you get that repetition, but it's not just drill and kill. You know, it's
right.
Use this thing to make that. Use this same thing to do that. Use the same thing to do that. So it gives them an opportunity for authentic repetition that doesn't grind them down.
Right. And they love to put it to use to like solve other problems. Like we use it through a design thinking process. Well, what did we learn in the climate challenge? How can we use that now with the teaching a bat how to fly? And, you know, just love the way they take their successes and pull it forward.
That's great. That's great to see in all kinds of different learners, that like that is a thing that learners do, is when they have a success, they take that forward with them. They take a lesson forward with them from there. And our hope is that they do the same thing with their struggles. And I think sometimes we have to teach students how to struggle forward. Hi, Stacy. Welcome. Glad you're here. We're just talking about students, serving students with special needs with coding and robotics, and what we think the particular challenges are. And we're talking specifically about students with learning difficulties, like struggling with math or struggling with reading. What are the particular challenges when working with academically struggling students and doing coding with them? And what are the opportunities that teaching coding to those students specifically presents? Does anybody else have some thoughts to offer on that topic, either challenges or opportunities that you've observed? Yeah, Sarah.
I just wanted to say that a lot of times when I'm teaching coding or robotics to students that have learning differences, they are the first ones to shine a lot of times, and they're the first ones to get it. So it's an opportunity for them to sort of be the leaders in the class, which I love. It comes.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it often comes much easier to them because they're used to having to think differently.
Yeah, why do you think that sometimes your struggling students, I see a lot of head nodding, why do you think that your struggling students are sometimes the first ones to figure out Why do you think that you see them shine when you're doing coding and robotics?
I don't know. It's always been like a highlight for me, but a mystery too. Like I don't know why. I've talked to we have a learning center in our school, the director of the learning center, and she loves when I tell her stories like that. But she said you could do your PhD on it, figure out why. Yeah.
True. Does anyone have any theories that you're working with when you see those struggling students leading the way in your CS and robotics courses? What are you thinking, Heather?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that in many ways there's constraints that have been removed, and there's never one answer anymore. There's like multiple ways, and you even like if you're thinking about like often we define writing as a certain way. We define writing as like pencil on paper or it's text. But if we look at writing, it's making, it's creating, and I think often students who struggle in the classroom are able to, it's defined a different way. They can be successful because it's not so much writing on paper or answering a question one way. There's many ways that they get to it. And I think that's why they shine, because they're able to find a different route.
What else do you guys think about coding as communication? That's what I feel like I was hearing you say, Heather. You're saying like, we think of writing as just pencil on paper or as text, and some students really struggle with that, where they struggle with spelling or penmanship. There's so many barriers that can kind of like go wrong between a student having an idea and getting it down on a piece of paper or getting it into a Word doc. And what do you guys think about coding as creation or as communication? What are your thoughts on that?
To chime in on what they were saying about like alternate pathways of understanding and things like that, and different ways to solve a problem. One thing about the coding robotics is it's hands-on and engaging, and it's not entirely in an abstraction, which might, one of our other core areas are, they require levels of abstraction in a certain way, whereas problem solving in robotics and coding allow the full creative process, and they allow multiple solutions. And they're also very engaging for the kids.
Yeah, that's something that we see a lot, especially when you're trying to reach students with exceptionalities, learning exceptionalities, students of color, girls, rural students, and students of low income, who are these like 5 traditionally underengaged students in CS and STEM. Making it physical really matters to those kids, because it's not an abstract concept that's happening on a screen. It's here. Does it work or not? Does the head move or did it not? That's how you know. It's a concrete way to kind of see that. I think Matt was telling me we have a comment coming in. What do we have coming in, Matt?
Well, we have a few comments.
Okay.
From here in the Zoom chat, Adrian was saying that coding and robotics gives students a multitude of modalities to explore and express themselves, unlike in other more restrictive curriculum areas. And related to that, Eileen on Facebook was saying that the feedback that a robot gives is non-judgmental. So if you write a program that is incorrect, your robot just simply doesn't work, or doesn't work the way you planned it to. There's not necessarily a right, wrong answer, and nobody's judging them for that.
Yeah, your robot is not disappointed in you, right? Your robot does not think you could have done it if you'd tried harder. Your robot doesn't think, I'll have to call home about this or whatever it is. Like, if the worst thing that'll happen if you really mess something up on a Hummingbird is it just doesn't work, right? And it's judgment free. It's like when you're clicker training a dog, like you can say, oh, good dog, but you can be like, good dog, and it doesn't sound right. Right, the words are right, but the thing's not there, and so when you, like, the theory behind clicker training a dog is if they respond to this, like, that is judgment free, that is tone free, and it looked like, Jen, you had something that you wanted to add to this, like, coding and communication sort of conversation as well.
Yeah, I'm taking notes on everything you guys are saying. I feel like I'm standing among giants right now as a first-year teacher. But when something that really strikes me, and maybe this is because teaching is new, I have a unique perspective, but the testing, the things that are tested, it's almost like that analogy of fish climbing a tree. And I think everyone kind of hit on that, but there's so much pressure on the teachers for some of the, I don't want to say antiquated skills. We do need to know how to read, and it is a higher form of communication to work with abstract ideas in our mind as well as to express them on paper. I get that. But there's so many ways to do that now with speech to text and other things. And so I just feel like, it's going to take time for education to change, but to have some of these tools in the classrooms, not just charter schools or private schools, but public schools, if I can be a voice for that. Teachers want to teach in ways to engage kids. And I have a student in my class, a sweet little kindergartner who is incredible. He's my tech guy. He literally, like, if I have a tech issue, I ask a kindergartner. It's incredible. And I'm not horrible with technology, but he's just amazing at it. And I tell his mom all the time, he's an incredible kid. The school is not designed for him. Mm-hmm. And so I just wish more curriculum could be, and that some of the testing pressures could be lifted so that teachers would have more creativity to, like, our teacher tests or teacher evaluations have technology integration, but the student tests are like dibbles, reading, and math, like computer assessments. It doesn't match up. And then the last thing, which I made a comment about, is my husband is so good at fixing anything that breaks in our house. It saves us so much money, and it's really cool to have like the knowledge that you can fix things and you can do things. Like, that is so empowering, and it's a real world skill. And I think that is what needs to be taught in public schools, and maybe even tested in some way, not necessarily traditional testing, in a more modern world.
That really relates to a comment that Dagny left in the comment section. Do you want to say that, what you had said, Dagny, out loud?
Sure, yeah. So something that I like to tell, like, students that I'm working with them is, like, if they're sort of bummed out that it's not working, then just trying to shift the conversation to, like, hey, well, maybe it's just not working yet. And so, like, let's work through that, and, like, we can solve those problems, and that's why we're here, is to work through those things. So trying to help them have that forward thinking and, like, looking towards the future, like, you're going to get it to work eventually, right? So we can work through that and help you do that. So that's good.
That, going back to our question about why do we sometimes see some of our struggling students really succeeding in surprising ways in coding and robotics. I've talked with a number of teachers, so this is not my theory at all, but when I've asked them that question, because when I do professional development all over the country, this tends to come up because they've seen it too. And I say, why? And everyone's like, well, I don't know. But one thing that continues to come forward is our students who struggle know how to struggle. They know how to persevere through that because they've had to, because they have failed and they've had to go to their next class. They have failed at something and had to move forward from that because stopping wasn't an option. And I can speak from my own personal experience that I was like, in for a couple of years, like in the gifted and talented program as a kid, and I didn't have to really learn how to study because it all came pretty easily to me until college. And I was taking AP courses, and I would review, but I didn't have to learn how to learn because the way that school wanted me to learn came really naturally to me. I didn't have to learn how to self-regulate and do some of those more some things that come really naturally to some kids. I didn't have to learn how to do that till later. I didn't have to learn how to struggle through something until later in life. And some of the kids who are really struggling in school, they know how to struggle and persist. Some of them don't know how to struggle and persist, and that's one of their things that they're working on. But learning from failure and reframing failure, I think, is a real opportunity that we have with hands-on learning to do just what Dagny said, which is just because it doesn't work doesn't mean it's never going to. It just means it doesn't work yet. And so, encouraging that mindset of persistence. I think that robotics is a really authentic way to do that because kids are really motivated to get this thing to work. They spent 1 hour or 2 hours or 6 hours building the thing, and they want to see it stick its tongue out. Gosh darn it. And they don't need you to tell them when they did it. They know because it did it. So like that's a really authentic way to have some personal commitment to success because they spent time thinking about it and imagining it and building it, and they want it to work right. Yeah. This is a really robust conversation, everyone. I'm really so glad that that you guys are all here today. We've got just about 10 minutes left, so I want to preview a little bit of what we're doing next week so that you can think about tuning in on Tuesday and Thursday and Friday of next week. So, couple previews. On Tuesday, we are going to be putting another little spin on a lesson that we did previously. So I'm going to spotlight myself up here if you can help me out with that, Matt.
Sure, gotcha.
We're gonna do a lesson that we did previously about rovers. So this is a little Hummingbird rover here. It's got a couple motors and a ping pong ball. And there is actually, just like with the Littlebot, there is a video series, a wordless, soundless video series on how to make a rover. And maybe Matt can pull that up off to the side so we can take a look at that. But there's a video series about how to make a rover. And so we've made a little rover right here. And then we're going to kind of talk about what makes a rover, what makes a good rover, etc. Oh yeah, let's go to that. He's got it pulled up here. So this is our little rover series about how to turn anything into a rover. I like to call this guy the grumpy commuter because he looks so grumpy.
I love the fingers on the steering wheel and that the steering wheel rides itself. That this was one of the best things I've ever built. It was so much fun.
Yeah, you've built one, Stacy. I loved.
Frankenbot.
Yeah. I don't know if you have that handy, but if you wanted to go grab it and show it
I'll
off.
go get it. And the only reason I did is I'm not I don't identify as creative. I know that I am. I just have to find that.
Yep.
So I made myself in the Femineers class. I built that because the instructions are so clear and the whole Hummingbird program is amazing. And so it was really satisfying to build something that works and then try something creative.
Yeah. You know, there's a small misconception with this project. If we go back to that first video again, Matt, so he's got this little steering wheel with his arms on it here, but that steering wheel is not actually controlling anything. The wheels themselves are being controlled, and his hands are that's another motor that's moving in response to that. Oh, Stacy, let's come spotlight you. This is Stacy's take on a rover here. We're gonna come up and look at yours.
The best thing is The best thing is that it's sensors, so it's like an autonomous vehicle. And then I programmed it so when his little hands turn to the right, his little blinker blinks on the right side, and then he turns. It's very cute, and it's very basic. You don't have to. This was the building part took about an hour and a half, and then the programming is very big. You can get into it, or you can just have a minor success. And I think this really lends to the discussion you had before with everything that we teach. At least half my students have special needs, either learning disabilities, they're underserved students, or students, English learners. And so, and then we have a large percentage of students who are homeless. So all these issues are coming into the classroom, and this is hands-on. You can build it to the extent that you want to build it. So yeah. It's very approachable.
I think that's one of the biggest advantages design actually is, like, to make a rover you need 2 wheels and a ping pong ball or something else for it to balance on, and then what you turn that into and what you program that to do is only limited by what you can imagine that you could do with it. So you could put a distance sensor on the front and make it a little grumpy commuter, and it'll like go forward until it senses something, and then it'll like back up and turn and go somewhere else. Like, that's something you could do with it. You could use a light sensor and an LED and make a line following rover. We did one of those in a previous webinar. If you look up our parade float webinar, we have a parade float, a little cereal box parade float that we made that follows a line. That's the parade route. And then we put another thing on top of it. That one's really fun. Or like this one, we have a maze, which we will set up again for Tuesday. And I've just put some Velcro on the bottom of this piece of cardboard here. And so now this is no longer a rover, it is a mouse. And then this mouse navigates a maze. And so we have a big cardboard maze set up off to the side. And the folks who tune in can code. And they can use their arrow keys to control our mouse to go through the maze in our space. So definitely, if you haven't checked out our previous Rovers, I think we called it Recycled Rovers, webinar on YouTube or on Facebook, you can definitely check that out. We're going to be doing a version of that on Tuesday as well. So if you've got, for all of these webinars on Tuesday, Thursdays, if you've got a Hummingbird kit, bring it with you. If you can go sneak into your school and grab it, bring it home with you, do that. Or if you don't have a Hummingbird kit, you can tune in as well, because we do a non-robotic version of all of these projects as well. So Tuesday is going to be Rovers, and we're going to talk about some different things that you could code your rover to do, brainstorm some things together. It should be a fun time. So that's Tuesday. And then Thursday, we're going to talk about this guy who I don't have hooked up to a hummingbird at the moment, but this is a little box puppet character. So when a motor pulls on this string here, the mouth opens like so. So it's a little puppet character. We're going to talk next week a little bit about what we could do with that. And then it's also got a secret hidden behind the hat, which I'm not going to show you because you should tune in on Thursday and find out what's back there. Ooh. So we can code that, but we're going to teach people how to build that and think about how could we use that same cable mechanism or some of our other mechanisms that we have on our build page. We have a whole bunch of craft supply mechanisms that you can make just by themselves or include a hummingbird with and build with. We have a whole bunch of mechanisms that use just craft supplies and a motor to turn that rotational energy into in and out energy or bendy energy or open and close energy or up and down energy with a winch. And so there you go. So there's like our crank mechanism that uses a paper clip and cardboard and hot glue, and that's it. And that could make a great like mouth. You could turn it on its side and it could make some great French doors if you're doing a cardboard home design. Cardboard redecoration, things like that. So we're going to talk about some mechanisms and things like that on Thursday as well. Take a look at those. And then on Friday next week, this past Friday, we talked about remote coding and how you could, at home, get your students to code what is in your home. So the students who are wherever they are and you wherever you are, they can code your robots. And so last Friday we talked about 3 different ways to get them to do that, using NetsBlocks, using Zoom and the remote coding feature of Zoom, and using Microbit Classroom. 3 different ways, so definitely check that webinar out. If you are looking like Tracy was, she mentioned early on before we started broadcasting that she was interested in ways to do robotics remotely for a summer program that she's working with. So definitely check that out, because that is a way, if you've got a robot and your students don't, that's a great way for them to still do physical computing and to reach that wider variety of students. But this Friday, we have found a way to add sensors to our remote coding experience on NetsBlocks. So Tom Lowers, Dr. Tom Lowers, who is our fearless leader here at BirdBrain, who's our CEO and the founder of BirdBrain, he's going to be adding some directions, I believe next week, about how to add a sensor to your NetsBlocks project. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit on Friday. And if I can kind of show you what we're talking about here, this is our remote coding page. So these are robots that are set up in Tom's house, in his office. So when you start playing with them, you're actually very distracting. You should definitely do it. He likes it a lot. So this dragon and the gnome and all that stuff, when they start moving, Tom knows because he's sitting right next to him. I've definitely been on meetings with him where the dragon starts like shh, 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 shh. It's pretty great. So you could connect to this robot and code it live from your house. You could send your students to this page. So now Matt just connected to this robot in Tom's house, or somebody did. Oh, it's you, yeah. Yeah, so Matt just connected, and so now there's about a 10 or 15 second delay, but he's gonna start there we go. So he's controlling that dragon in Tom's house
Kelsey,
right now.
you can find this on the Hummingbird website?
Yep, it's on the at home page. I'll grab my mouse really quick and take us there. So if you go to at home, which is on the top of every page, and you go to remote robots right there, that takes you to how to do remote robots. There's like a how-to page, the tutorial page here, and there's also, you can control the dragon, you can control the gnome, this LB on the left, that one's new, Twonky on the right, that's funny. And then the city, the Pittsburgh sort of skyline here too. So you can do all of those from that page. It's all, you get there through the at-home page on BirdBrain. So.
And you could also learn how to set up your own as well if you want to set up your own remote coding system.
Yep, that tutorial there is how you learn to set it up for yourself so that your students could program yours. But definitely check out the webinar from last Friday's Teacher Talks, where we go over 3 different ways to do it. There's even a slideshow associated with that, which you can access once you watch that webinar, to show you kind of the advantages and the limitations of the 3 different systems for remote coding. So that one's it's a really thorough overview. So it's just a little bit after 3, so we're going to end our live stream in just a moment here. I want to say thank you so much to all of the teachers who joined us today. Can we give ourselves a round of applause? Yeah, is that very good? Yeah, okay. So thank you all so much for joining. We really loved all of your experience and expertise. The last thing I want to do is tell people just a couple things. We always end with a little bit of information about things that you can access. So there's that Robotics at Home page that we just talked about. Definitely visit there to learn about all of the live classes coming up next week. You can register. You have to register to get the Zoom link. You can access our courses, which are available for either tablets or computers. Those are on the Robotics at Home page too, so you can teach yourself how to use the lights, motors, sensors of your kit. And you can also even purchase a hummingbird or a finch to have at home. You can just purchase like one. You don't have to get a whole classroom set. You can just have one to have at home for you, or you could send your families there as well if you'd like for them to have one for, say, a summer program, something like that. If you have questions about anything, you can certainly ask us, info@birdbraintechnologies.com, whether those are tech support questions, which a lot of times those come to Matt. So you can, that's one way to talk to Matt. You can do some tech support questions if you need anything like that, or ordering questions, anything like that. And as always, we would love to hear from you on social media. So you can tag @BirdBrainTech or #HummingbirdKit on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And we'd love to hear from you. You can also tag me if you are so inclined. I'm only on Twitter, but there's that. But from all of us at BirdBrain Technologies, thank you so much, teachers, and thank you everyone for tuning in. We really appreciate your time, talents, and information. So we'll end our live stream here. Thanks. Thank you so much for joining us today. We can't wait to see what you make on social media. On Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, you can tag @BirdBrainTech or #HummingbirdKit, or you can even tag me. If you have any questions, be sure to email us, info@birdbraintechnologies.com. We can answer questions about purchasing, about learning, about teaching, and about professional development. If you haven't been there yet, be sure to visit our Robotics at Home page. There you can purchase a kit for yourself, learn how to use it, and even join one of our upcoming webinars. Until we see you in class, thanks for watching from everyone at BirdBrain Technologies.